came to our consensus, as long as, and I want you to understand that we're not coming in saying we know everything there is to know about DOK, right? This is reading and then working with you all to understand in our CCC, this is what we are going to identify as DOK 1, 2, 3, but also as a math department, we want to have some consensus as well. So hopefully once we get to the end, we'll all be on the same page about what that should look like. So DOK 3, where are my DOK 3 people? Identifying some things you pulled out. What were some takeaways from the article that you can share out with everyone who didn't get a chance to read the DOK 3 section? Thanks, Farmer.
It took more of a skill of analyzing mathematical principles and reasoning, where you can conjure forms of representations and constructing models from non-routine situations. It's more complex and abstract. So one discussion that we had was, well, there's a word problem with the DOK3, and it said it depends on the information that's given, and how often, like, when you read a word problem, can you read it multiple times and you know you're going to higher level? And if it requires you to derive a proof or something like that. So, so for like, there's a stat stream and they do like experiments. So for them, the DOK3 would be to have their students conduct an experiment where the students are doing everything and creating it and putting it in one research cycle, where rather than that would be DOK3. DOK2 is like, solve this problem and I do like something study. That's not as much, doesn't take as much for the students to do.
Got it. Anything want to add to that Farmer shared? Oh. No? Going once, going twice? All right, so if we're still sticking to this cookie idea, DOK 3. Right. I know. I can tell you something. Chips on my way. It's chips on my way. But DOK 3 will start to get students to think, what if you wanted to make a healthy chocolate chip cookie? So now this is moving beyond what I know about chocolate chip cookies, that I know I need flour, eggs, sugar, and chocolate chips. Now I'm trying to make a healthier version, which is moving beyond just limiting the amount of sugar, but thinking, what if I'm vegan? How can I have that? So now I'm moving, can I apply this knowledge to a totally separate situation? So now students are beginning to think I can do a no-bake cookie, right, with oatmeal and cocoa nibs, right? They could do anything that requires them to think about how to adjust this recipe. Or could chocolate chip cookies be savory? Why or why not? Or is it a chocolate chip cookie if there's no form of some sweetener, be it added or an alternative? Or what if my cookies turn out flat? What did I do wrong and how do I make it better? So they're going through that cycle of asking themselves questions. How can I tweak something? Looking at a model of some sort in mathematics and thinking about where the students go wrong. So this is where you start to bring in error analysis for students. Can they look at someone else's work and identify where they went wrong and then how to fix it? So now you're not only thinking about complexity, but you're applying the mathematical practice as well of constructing a viable argument or critiquing the reasoning of others. So they're applying those skills, which are those math habits we want students to be able to employ. That last one is also a version of the statistical reasoning framework, where students are going through that process of asking themselves a question, figuring out the process. If the process goes wrong, how do I go back to revise it to figure out, can I make it better? So that is a part of mathematical modeling and statistical reasoning, which are the two new frameworks that came out with our math standards. All right? So, same process again. I'm going to set a timer this time because we really went over on DOK 2. But here with DOK 3, again, I want you to look at your assessments. I heard a lot of reflection that we were having at back tables and side tables about DOK 1 being the primary source of our questions, right? There can be high DOK 1s. There's a spectrum to this. But now I want you to see if you have any DOK 3s. Again, justify it using the language from the article. And if there are no DOK 3s, can you make any? Can you work with your CCC to come to a consensus about what a DOK 3 will look like? How are we having students construct argument or critique the reasoning of others? How are they having to adjust something in a way that is different than what they have traditionally seen with you? Okay? So I'm gonna set my timer. We're only gonna spend 5 minutes here. Definition page, but I also gave you a note-taking sheet. You're going to notice that we're going to have this conversation in a very, I guess, common conversation that we'll then be able to transfer and apply to mathematics. So as groups are giving their explanation, feel free to write down what you take away from what they're sharing on your notes document on the left-hand side, and then on the right-hand side is where we'll use that to write assessment-type questions. So we'll jump into the DOK 1. So, DOK 1 group. You have something you want to share? Oh, no? She's ready. I'm ready for you.
Well, we know the DO1, it's just basic recall. It's just basic, what we discussed, basic recall, basic, information, simple questions such as, you look at a graph, what are the points in point of view? It's basic recall for the students. We talk about, how our students, why are most of our students at that level? So we begin to discuss the things they have experienced over time, with COVID and things that have to.
Gotcha.
With the generational.
Gotcha. Anybody want to add anything else to DOK 1? So we got recall. What does that look like in mathematics? Say it again. Solve, right? What is the sixth term? All of those are typically DOK 1. We got that part? So recalling using a specific given formula, order of operations, that's going to be DOK 1. So we got that part. All right, so when you think about this, it's typically in a common term, what is a chocolate chip cookie? Students are going to know a chocolate chip cookie because it has the chocolate chips in it, right? I can recall that. Why is it a chocolate chip cookie? Chocolate chips inside. Right? I recall that. Who was the first president of the United States? Recall, right? They'll be able to do that. Or how are chocolate chip cookies made? Any of those basic, I just recall something someone's giving me, that's going to be DOK 1. We cool on that? All right, so again, we've done our shout it out. Y'all did that for me. DOK 2, what y'all got for us? Not all at once.
We noticed the use of the word interpreting a lot.
Okay.
For DOK 2, they're formulating an equation, whereas an equation may just be given to them for the DOK 1, but DOK 2, based on the word problem, they have to actually create the equation. Yeah, that was all I had.
Got it. Thanks, Cortez. Anybody want to add to what Cortez added there? No?
I mean, kind of along with interpreting and explaining, kind of, so like, somebody can give an example of like the slope of the line, what is the slope of the line, that would be DOK 1, explain what the slope of the line means in this situation, that would be a DOK 2.
Gotcha. So using an explanation or explaining beyond just what is it. All right? So when you look at that, DOK 2 is going to have students doing. All right? So here, if I tell you to bake a chocolate chip cookie, right, they're going to go and do it. So they're applying what they know about chocolate chip cookies to then go and bake a chocolate chip cookie. Or write a recipe for a chocolate chip cookie. So now they're applying what they know. I have to know how many people I want to bake for, or I need to know what ingredients. I then need to know which steps I'm going to combine my ingredients. Do I do wet and dry? Do I put them together all in a bowl? Do I, if I wanted to then, lost my train of thought there, so I'm going to keep going. And then what makes chocolate chip cookies different from other cookies? All right, so they're having to apply the knowledge in some way. Okay? So, I got ahead of myself, and what I was supposed to have you do ahead of time was look at your assessment question and label them DOKs based on what you all had determined. So we're going to sort of combine that step right now. So with your CCCs, you should have an assessment on your table, What I want you to do is to look at your assessment and identify a DOK level 2 question that you previously assigned, okay? Which one did you assign a DOK to? And then I want you to use the definition, hold tight, use the definition from Web Align. Either justify why it is a DOK 2, or if it's not, think about what you could do to revise it to make it a DOK 2 question. Yes, sir. We don't have an assessment here.
It's not the assessment.
Oh, that's not the, I'm sorry.
Of the foundation.
They're just.
They all just algebra. All these gonna be DOK ones. All these gonna be
We're back inside the colony. What that? What colony?
And then one that you identified as DOK 2. You're thinking about either justifying why it is DOK 2 using the definition from Web, or how can you revise it. All right? Okay. So now I'm noticing.
making us hungry.
And just sort of share out, what are you noticing as you're going through your assessments, as you're using the definition, as you're trying to write those questions? What are some of the things that you are noticing? Or what's coming out of your conversation?
Just like I shared, we noticed that we had a lot of DOK 1s and DOK 2s. What we thought was higher level was actually more difficult, but we don't have a lot of DOK 3s, which means you don't have a lot of complexity.
Okay. Thank you for being honest and transparent with that. You said the same for this?
Yes, I said the same for foundations. I realized, I thought it was just us and foundations because we are foundations.
Gotcha. All right. Any other ahas or things coming out? How were you able to revise some of your questions? Did you revise some questions? Do you want to spend some time talking about what that looks like? Yes, ma'am.
Jessica.
They're posting to talk.
Yes.
But we did, we noticed that our unit test for this upcoming, or this unit that we're in, did not have what a complete DOK 3 level question, which we thought it did. So, we suggested either using error analysis or, have them, like, infer, that's the word, infer,
Yes.
to develop that DOK 3 question, not necessarily changing the question, but just adding that concept to the question.
And that's what I was hoping to, we were hoping to bring out of, as you all were talking. We're not asking you to totally rewrite your assessment. What we are asking is to think about the overuse of scaffolding. Like, are we giving way more than we need to give in order to have students to reason, think, and problem solve, right? So just think about it. One of the questions, and I hope they don't mind if I share what we discussed earlier, but we were looking at a problem that requires students to use the distance formula. And it was a word problem, and oftentimes we think it's a word problem. DOK 2! And as you notice, it's not. Just because you give it a context doesn't make it a DOK 2 if we give every piece of information that students need. And so one of the things we recognized was we could take away the distance formula that we supplied to them, and just give them the information and then have students apply the formula. Or, my friend identified, she was like, well, what if we gave it to them, gave the formula to them and asked them to identify what the numbers mean in this situation and then continue to solve that. So again, giving students an opportunity, one, to show you what they know, tell you what they know, and apply what they know. All right? Yes, ma'am.
So question.
Yes.
And we were talking about this when we were talking about the DOK 1 and DOK 2 level question. If we give them a multiple choice test, does that make it, if they have to create the formula, but because it's multiple choice and they have options to what the formula should be, does that now make it a DOK 1 versus a DOK 2, which if they had to just write it out without any guidance or multiple choice?
So again,
You see the,
I see, because there's always a dilemma, right? They're gonna take, we understand that they have to take multiple choice assessment. My understanding, and Nikki, feel free to share your thoughts on this as well. If it was given, then it already limits the DOK that it could be with the multiple choice, answers provided. Is in my definition of it, according to what they would have to be able to do. Nikki, you
Yeah,
want to?
I was gonna say the same thing, I completely agree, because once you give them answer choices and it's there, it lowers the complexity of the thinking, and they can just simply choose from that list. But if it's not there, then they have to think through it, so their thinking is different, it's more complex.
Yes, ma'am.
So like going along with that mindset for algebra and for foundations, since we give them formula sheets on the EOC, did you say not give them the formula sheet?
Well, no.
Or do we still give them the formula sheet, and would it still be a DOK 3 if you write the question that way? Because there's the formula, some of them may use it, some of them may not, but it's still there.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying giving them a formula sheet lowers DOK,
Okay.
because
But
that's.
if you say
that
in the
one
problem,
is-
this formula is X, Y, and
Yes.
Z, okay.
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Real quick, this may take a different conversation, so we don't have time for it. When we're writing our test, because I'm thinking, our test is 16 questions, let's do a test, right? But what should be like, should there be a certain representation of DOK levels throughout the test? Should be an equal representation, or?
So there is no, and again, there's a lot of like free, what's the word? Academic prerogative, word that I have to use. And again, those are the kinds of conversations we either come to a consensus as a math department or a CCC. Those are the conversations we have to have. There is no rule on the number of DOK level questions on an assessment. They do ask for a balanced DOK assessment. We understand that the more you get into the threes, you're getting into the complex reasoning. Having the students explain. If students aren't having to write and explain anything to you and not beyond their steps, you're not getting into the complexity of it. And I understand that we are shifting, we want students to show their work and things like that, but if students aren't having to apply something or explain to you how they are manipulating a situation, then we aren't reaching that level of complexity. So we want to make sure we have those. That's why you'll notice on end of course assessment, they'll have the multiple choice, they'll have extended responses, and then they'll have sometimes the technology enhanced type questions where they are having to manipulate things. So they're just asking for a balanced level of those. All right? And then the final piece that we talked about was DOK 4. DOK 4 people, what did you pull out of that?
That is not really something you can have on an assessment because it's more of a long-term project phase. And for us to effectively do effectively, it would have to be cross curriculum with another content area.
Got it. So what Bozeman pulled out was, they are not meant to be assessment questions. So I want to start there. If you don't hear anything else today, you tune me out. Hear this. DOK 4 cannot be an assessment question, right? Those are going to be tasks that students will engage in. And you all have that 30-minute literacy block during third period every day. A perfect opportunity to have students think about how to apply your concept via, a task in that class over the course of days, like using that 30-minute segment as a chance for students to explore some of these opportunities. And I'm going to defer to my partner here.
I am running back on time, out of time, but I just wanted to share a couple of tasks that you can do with students for DOK4 and actually use these with students. So for DOK4, what you're thinking about is making connections. So if I know how to make chocolate chip cookies, can I take that and apply it to make brownies? Can I take what I learned here and then apply it to something new? Okay? So that's what you're thinking about. You're thinking about making connections. So next slide. So here's some examples. So for example, we had a group of students that were repeating algebra in the summer program, and we gave them this task. So the first one was to write a proposal on how to place how to have a mural placed on your classroom wall. And what they had to do was take the design, make a design, find out the dimensions of the wall, the area of the wall, all of that. Then they had to think about the cost. And then they had to write a proposal of that. And they were able to do that in 2 weeks. Okay?
And don't think about writing these down. We are going to share.
Yeah, we're gonna share all these
these resources with you.
The next one, design a school spirit sweatshirt and determine ways to maximize your profit. So we had a group of students that designed the sweatshirt. They wanted everything to be inclusive. It was like you count, you matter. And then they sold those, but then they also decided, oh, if we sell them during certain times, we can make more money. So they put them on sale. So like if it was like homecoming, they went on sale. So, and that was also a group of algebra students, algebra repeaters, that they said. And they were able to do that as well in 2 weeks. Okay? Prove the use of cell phones in your class improved grades. I had an AP statistics class, they would not stay off their cell phones. I said, prove it to me, that this improves your grades. And it became a project. You think they proved it?
No.
They had all these projects, and then they actually did research and found out that, oh, it actually impacts our brains in a negative way. We can't multitask. So that was a good project. Determine which cell phone company provides the most cost-efficient family plan. That's another example. Capture the quadratic functions you see in everyday life, and then justify why they're important. So we had a lot of kids taking pictures, and then they had a project, they had to write actually a paper on why quadratics were important in their life. And they had all these pictures that you wouldn't even think of that they saw quadratics. Okay. Investigating how we will maximize the time students are given to eat lunch during C lunch. We had a problem during C lunch where all the kids weren't able to eat and the lines were backed up. Give that to the kids. How can we make this happen? How can we make this lunch better for kids? How can we get all of our kids to eat in a timely manner? Okay. Last but not least, you know how the kids always argue about basketball players, like who's better, who's not, and all that. They were arguing one day, and I said, okay, statistically prove it to me. Who's better, Steph or LeBron? And they had to research and find all that, stats, and put that together. And they actually used normal curves, so this is for advanced algebra. So they used normal curves to compare who was better. So those are just some ideas and some DOK4 examples. I know we're short on time, but I thank you for listening to us today and learning with us today. Ashley, you want to say anything else?
I was just going to have you, again, thinking about how do you take problems that are happening here in your school and applying that to your concept. That's going to address that statistical reasoning and mathematical modeling framework. Think about having students solve problems that are happening here at South Cobb. All right, be careful. DOK1 isn't bad. We're not saying to death with all DOK1. That's not what we are suggesting. Students have to know these things. There are things they have to know and be able to do. And as it says here, you can't write a blog about something you don't know anything about. So students can't write and apply if they don't know the basics. So DOK1 isn't bad. But again, you really have to look at your standard and think about what your standard is asking students to do. Please don't take your standard and look at the learning objectives as a set of checklist items you need to teach. Think about clustering. Which of those learning objectives can be paired together in an experience for students to reach the standard? Take words like analyze and apply that idea to the error analysis, and not just note-taking or having students tell you what the things are, but have them look at it and write about it. Write about the characteristics. Identify the characteristics and where do you see them? How does it apply? getting students to really reach the language of the standard. And lastly, I'm gonna ask, I have paper copies, I probably won't have enough, but we'll see. If not, I will send this form. Oftentimes, you high school people don't wanna take my surveys, okay? Y'all leave out of here and then you don't do them. Yes. So if you would, please just do this survey. Our goal is to continue to be reflective and give you all what you need. So if you would, please, good, bad, ugly, or indifferent, if you will complete that survey for me, I would be most grateful.
Your name?
Yes, my name is Ashley Powell, and my partner is Verlinda.
Everybody calls me Nikki though. No one calls me Nikki.
Verlinda Nikki Thompson.
I'm not getting the code. It's not text. Do you need a paper copy?
No, I have a board, right?
Okay.
Oh, it is, it's our name being presented. I will. So I put both names on?
Yes.
Wait, she made you. Then you're eating sugar free. Is it because it's round? Paper copy go?
Yeah, I need one. It's not gonna be in the doc.
Oh, okay.
You want a paper copy?
Yes. Oh, you got it?
Paper copy?
I should have had chips over here.
Anyone else like a paper copy?
That's right.
You got like soft.